There we are. Hello. Lisa, do you want to screen share? All right. So welcome to our time together today. And Somerville, Johnston, Lisa Kennemur, and myself, Katie Asmus, we're going to be talking about crafting powerful solo retreat experiences for yourself, because we can all use solo time, and because many people who are in our community are therapists, healers, who are also saying, or for your clients. And we have several different pieces we're going to cover today. We are, as if you know, have you been with me on webinars or classes, we'll begin with some grounding in a few moments. And we will do a little intro of who we are, the presenters, our relationship with ceremony and solo time in particular. And really, our intentions is that this will benefit everyone, again, because we all need solo time. And one of our, I can say our, but my and our intentions in the work that we do is really making solo and ceremony time accessible to everyone, no matter what your life, what your resources, what your time is. And so we're really going to cover looking at how and why is solo benefit, all, and then look at all the different ways that that can look. And we're going to guide you through a reflection, some journaling time. So you might want to have some paper, pen, or your computer, however you like to take notes, nearby. So I'm going to guide you through some reflection on how you can do this for yourself that's a very realistic way given your current life. And then we'll also talk a little bit about, share, if you would like, guided experiences, different organizations that offer different guided experiences. We will also at the end talk a little bit about our guided experiences, and we'll have time for questions, answers, reflections a couple times throughout, including at the end. And we'll also end intentionally together. Also, I'll say JC Cole, who's on here, she is supporting this webinar. So if anyone has any tech questions or needs, you can send her a direct message, or she'll be kind of monitoring the chat for us. Okay, so would love to invite us all into a few moments of breath and shifting gears from wherever you've been to this particular time. So as you're ready, I invite you to bring your attention inward, and that might be closing your eyes or having a soft gaze, whatever helps you to bring most of your attention inward. And as you bring your attention inward, on the next exhale, allowing yourself to feel the felt sense of ground beneath you. For the next few exhales, feeling ground, that might be the ground beneath your feet, or the seat beneath you and or behind you. Letting that felt sense of ground just bring you bit by bit even more into this moment, to your body. Feeling the space around you. And as you're ready, bringing your attention to your heart area. You can do that simply through your attention. If it feels supportive, you might make physical contact with your heart area with your hand. and or bring your breath to that place. If for any reason that's uncomfortable, you can always shift your focus to something that is more comfortable, like your feet or the ground again. So as you bring your attention, if and as you bring it to your heart, just begin to notice what arises all by itself as you put your attention there. That might be sensations, emotions, or qualities. Maybe even images. With whatever is present, just seeing if you can make space for your own heart, physically, energetically, sensing that your heart, the physical organ of your heart, is supported by the rest of your body, by the structure of your body. So as you breathe into your heart area, maybe invite it to be held, to be supported by the physical structure that surrounds it. And as you feel your heart, noticing what happens as I say this, maybe allowing an image or a sense of something that you care about to arise. Allow an image or sense of something you care about to arise. And as that arises, just noticing what happens in your heart area as this thing you care about comes to mind. And if it feels supportive, again, noticing as you hold this in your heart and you breathe into your heart, what happens? And just noticing what it's like to be in contact with something that matters.
The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at each other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Derek Walcott, Love After Love.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Lisa, for that poem, and Katie for that grounding. I feel a lot of warmth and love coming, and thank you all for joining us. We're going to tell you a little bit first about who we are, orient you to the three of us and why we are passionate about solo time, why we can't live without it. So my name is Somerville Johnston. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and therapist here in Asheville, North Carolina. I also am an outdoor wilderness guide, yoga instructor, various things, different hats, but I own and facilitate Aspen Roots Collective retreats, wellness adventure retreats, and work with individuals, both near and far. I love the photo here on the right. Katie, that was from, I also get to co-facilitate with Katie once a year in the Soul Fire Quest. That was from that quest. So solo time to me means a lot of different things. And just my passion there started probably long ago with doing something I didn't know I could do, spending time in the wilderness by myself, doing a hard thing, but then has evolved to be short experiences, solo time on a daily basis, and longer experiences. And I'll just share briefly an example of a really powerful experience in my life. Was a very long, less structured solo adventure post-divorce. So we're going to talk about a lot of different solo experiences, but for me, I left Asheville. I hopped in like the tiny home version of a van. So tiny space, headed out west, and marked that transition of being in a union to returning to myself. Spent a lot of time exploring and making no commitments and no plans with anyone. And that continued on and off for a year and a half. So on the longer version of solo experiences, yes, I was with others in that time, but primarily it was just me, myself, and I with little mini, like MINI, mini solos sprinkled throughout, often nature-based. So that shifted a lot of my ability to just to know who I am. And I can share more about that later on. So I'll pass it on to Lisa.
Thanks, Somerville. Yes, hi everyone. My name's Lisa Kennemur. I use she, her pronouns. I work with the Somatic Wilderness Therapy Institute. I know many of you from various contexts. I do program management. I also co-facilitate Quest with Katie in the summer. I've been with the Institute about 4 years now. And yeah, I think my big connection, I would say, to solo time was I didn't even really know what or how to do it, but I just know that I need it. And I, did a major life transition in 2017 when I retired from the military after 25 years and decided I wanted to go back to school and get into mental health counseling and a wilderness therapy program specifically. And I found Europa University and embarked upon that big journey. And as a part of that, we did a 8-day rites of passage program, which Katie Asmus facilitated as my instructor. And there was a 3-night solo in that. And I loved everything about the experience. I loved the structure of it. I loved that there was, a workup to it with lots of journal prompts and thought and connecting with other folks about their intentions. And then the ceremony within the ceremony within the ceremony that just kept unfolding, within the program itself and then beyond with the incorporation pieces. So for me, that was a big, big milestone for me, and also something that just told me this is the work that I want to do, and have really just loved every minute of helping people walk that path. So that's my introduction.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm Katie Asmus, and I am a psychotherapist. I'm an educator of nature therapy, somatic therapy, EMDR therapy. I'm the founder of the Somatic Wilderness Therapy Institute and also a rites of passage guide. And this topic is so near and dear to my heart. I feel like it has been woven throughout my whole life. When I think about growing up, when I felt like I had something on my heart that I didn't know what to do with, I would go down to Lake Erie. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and sit on the rocks and journal. And it was kind of my intuitive personal sit spot growing up. So I have a lot of good memories of that. And then started working outdoor education when I was 19 years old. And a big part of all of the outdoor ed programs I did was solo time, whether that was an hour sitting in the woods journaling with students, or at Outward Bound, we would have people go on sometimes a day or 3 day solo. And then my desire to really learn, how do we deepen this? How do we ceremonialize this? Really has been a big part of my inspiration in my professional work as well as my personal work. So I've been leading wilderness quests now for about 20 years, through Naropa University, and then also through my own work. And one really significant experience for me was I decided to go out in the woods. This was about, goodness, like 12 years ago now, 13 years ago. I decided to go do my own wilderness quest, and for 3 days, 3 nights. And I decided to do that 6 months ahead of time. And during that time, I started sharing with people that I was orienting toward this experience. And as I shared it with people, so many of my friends said, well, what I realized was living in Boulder, working at Naropa, and being in this therapy quest community, a lot of my friends had done some kind of solo time. And so many people said, how can I support you? And so by 6 months, by the time I got to this experience, so much had already happened with my intentions. And I had friends that sent me off, listened to my intentions. My husband came and drummed on the land while I was on solo. And another friend came and welcomed me out, brought me food at the end because I was fasting. And another group of friends welcomed me home. And it was, for me, the most significant experience because it was one that was spontaneous. It was, well, and planned, but it was embedded in my community. And there are all these creative ways that people showed up that it really inspired me to look at how do we help people create personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremonies, solos, etc., that really involve what's happening in our lives and our community. So we are going to talk about a pretty big spectrum today around what this could look like, from literally 5 minutes to many days. But that was a significant experience for me in my life. Great. Somerville.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So we'll get into now, what are the various benefits of going on a solo or solo time? We were chatting about, like, is it necessary? Well, personally, I feel, Lisa was laughing, like it feels necessary for all of us, but it might not feel necessary for everyone. But through this list, maybe check in and see what resonates. Tons of reasons to take solo time. Certainly nervous system regulation. And I would point out on both ends, depending on the type of solo time you're taking, it can be really calming to step away from overwhelm, but it can also be activating to do the more, what I think of as challenging types of solos, where you're stepping out into the wilderness at night. And so that nervous system regulation, working both sides, can be helpful. Getting away from screens, getting away from our loved ones that we often can over-orient to and tend. That can be everything from a partner to a puppy. So creating that space to quiet and also listen, and listen without just the distraction of the daily life. Listen in a way that helps us hear our inner wisdom. It also gives us permission to not orient to others, to not get distracted by the needs of those around us. It can be a way to help us kind of shake up the snow globe of life, like establish new rhythms and routines, get out of our norm, and also mark significant transitions in our lives. So as an example, when I was leaving, to head out in my van, I had just gone through the legal aspect of divorce, and I first went down to the river solo, did a hike down to the river to baptize myself with my what then was my like taking back my maiden name, right? So this ritual that helped me transition into a solo space. I think also getting to know ourselves in a different context helps us see our gifts a little more clearly. And solo can, I mean, a lot of the ways we'll talk about it will be nature-based. It doesn't have to be nature-based, but when it is, helps us tune into the part of ourselves that is nature and connect maybe with higher power, with God, with love, with source. And then that sense, if you are choosing a harder experience, whether that's fasting for a few days outside, or I used to do this monthly like full moon adventure where at night I would just go do something by myself, and it scared me, and I thought that was really good for me. So a sense of accomplishment of what's possible, and that can be anchored in your body in a new way that's not that's different from doing a hard thing just with your mind. Yeah, I would say this is like just the tip of the iceberg of how solo time can be beneficial. It can also be a way of saying no to others and saying yes to yourself. So Lisa and Katie, what would you add to that list?
I don't know if I would add anything to that list. I think what I'd like to kind of maybe shift into is like, what can maybe that look like? And I think that it can look like a lot of different things, as you were saying. And, it can be, as Katie said, 5 minutes, or it can be days, weeks, months, or even years. And so, I think that the most important thing to remember is that you don't necessarily have to have a lot of time, and you don't necessarily have to go deep into the wilderness. You can do it in your backyard. So I think that the important things to remember is to take the time, one, and then to find a place that works for you. And then the last thing is the structure piece, right? It can be guided or it can be unguided. And that really kind of comes down to, preference, I think. I will give an example of one of my practices that I do for solo time. I like to go, we have a farm not far from where I live. It's a public farm, and I often will go down and walk there. And I do so with, holding a question of, what it might be many different things, but it might be, what's in my heart today, and then allow myself to be drawn to whatever I'm drawn to in nature that might have some wisdom to share with me. And I often will, pick a very definitive threshold to cross, and a very, going into my solo time, and then a very definitive ending to it to cross back out and to come back into the world of technology. And so I think that for me, just having that space and then the connection piece with nature is very big for me. And I find that connection, with nature beings to be very special, and to have the opportunity to enter into conversation and just listen to what wisdom they have to share with me, and then the space to actually hear it is what I need. Katie, would you like to add an example or two? Or
Sure. Exactly. I know I have so many I want to share. One is I'll share a personal one that's very short, is I am not a morning person. It takes me a little while for my brain to wake up. And I have developed this practice, and I know that my whole life and day is better when I turn on music. I take some solo time, I turn on music, and I actually let my body move, like dance, really. And for me, that's this ritual in the morning that can be 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And it literally makes a huge difference around how the rest of my morning and my day goes. So I think about that as solo time. Just makes me think of what one of the purposes, which is really to shift our perspective, to shift our state. So that's one. I also think about, I recently was working with a client, and she is a mom and a partner and a business owner, and she was really burnt out. And I started saying, well, how can you get some self-time? Like, what's realistic? And at first she said, I just really can't do it. And by the end of our conversation, she decided she was going to go to a hotel, and she was going to go for like 18 hours. She was going to get an early check-in, stay overnight, stay as long as she could. And she was going to, make sure all her responsibilities were taken care of, turn off her technology. And she did it. And she was like, this was the first time I took time for myself, like intentional solo time, in 15 years. And she said, now I think I need to do this at least twice a year just for one night. So that's a great example of just something that's right. How do you do this with what your life looks like? And I'll give two more examples, and then I'll see if you want to add, Somerville. I was just thinking about the artist date. So for anyone who's done the artist's way, it's really Julia Cameron's work, very popular for many decades now. There are two main practices: the morning pages, which is a form of also solo time, being with yourself, being with your thoughts, putting them to paper. And the other practice is the artist's date. And essentially, it's doing something outside of your norm, going out by yourself. And it's really about shifting perspective, walking out from what is familiar. And there's something often about, especially when we're outdoors or going away from our day to day, that it opens up a perspective that's often really hard to connect with when we're in the familiar, when we're in the to-dos, when we're in the even familiar relationships. And as we were prepping for this, Lisa wanted me to tell you this story that I love telling in my classes. Many of you may have heard this, but one time I was with a client in a session, and she was feeling really distraught and stuck. She had just graduated with her master's degree in counseling, and it was like the second week of summer or after she had graduated, and it's like, I don't know what to do next. And I have some really big possibilities on the horizon. Should I stay and live, in Colorado and get a job? Should I move to California? And I'm thinking about going and getting my PhD. And so we worked with it all session, and there was no more clarity. And so we were very close to the end. And at that point, I had a office that looked out onto the Flatirons in Boulder. And I said, well, let's walk outside. Let's go on the porch. And I said, hey, are you willing to do a little experiment? So I want you to formulate an open-ended question for yourself about this. And you don't have to tell me what it is. Just let me know when you have that. She said, okay. So I said, okay, so I'm going to invite you to look around out here and let yourself be drawn visually to something in the environment. And whatever that is, just go ahead and be with it for 5 minutes and see what happens. Actually, it was 4 minutes. 4 minutes. I was like, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be silent. Just be with this thing for 4 minutes. See what it has to tell you. So I was totally quiet, believe it or not, for 4 minutes. And, and at the end of 4 minutes, I said, okay, I actually rang a bell, and she turned to me and she said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to California and go to graduate school. And I said, how do you know that? She said, because I looked at the clouds and the clouds look like waves. And then my heart knew that I needed to go back to the ocean. And like 3 weeks later, she moved to California and sure enough, got her PhD. So love that. Like the power of solo can be very simple when we have a clear intention for ourselves. Yeah, Somerville, do you want to share any other example?
Yeah, I'll give a couple more examples. And I'm again thinking like the small daily versus the big challenging, and the small daily that and even in a house with another person, I think there's ways, right, that we have to, I had to strengthen my ability to go inward and go solo in my daily journal practice, where I'm focused inward, intending and listening, even with people around. And so I definitely work with clients on finding small ways to find that connection internally. And that even includes, can think of a couple of clients of when they do their daily walk, like leaving their phone behind. And that's really difficult for folks these days. It feels very uncomfortable. And that's one of the goals of the solo, right? Is to step away from a little bit of the the buffer that gets in the way of listening. And then on the other end, the kind of more rigorous solo times I have enjoyed and been very challenged by solo backpacking trips that are 1 night to 5 night. And it's not the physical backpacking that's the challenge. It's what emerges along the way and what teachers show up and what guides and what internal processes that really highlight my patterns in a way that's more, has more of like a crux to it than just my daily journaling. Um, and then, yeah, so, and I think the same with clients. I've supported folks in just doing overnight, a camping overnight, like near people that they know. So it's not too much of a stretch for them, but that's much more significant, right, than walking around the block without your phone. And yet it's important to notice which version of a solo time fits your needs right now. And that can obviously change in different circumstances.
I love that. Great. Anything else before we shift gears here? No. Okay. So I'm going to walk you through a process to consider how, if you were to craft and take solo time for yourself in a way that was really beneficial, doable, authentic, what could that be? And I'm going to walk you through some questions. If you have something to write with, I'm going to invite you to journal. And if you are a therapist, healer, and you want to write these down, write the questions down too, to have for yourself or for others. These are basically the kind of questions and considerations that I'll offer to clients. So, okay. The first question is, we're going to flush up your associations. So you're not going to have to share this with anybody. So just being with yourself, with what comes up. The first question is, what comes up for you when you think of taking solo time? What comes up for you when you think of taking solo time? The beliefs, the thoughts, can just first thought, best thought, write those down. Be on either or both ends of the spectrum, like excitement, fear, all the reasons why you think you can't do it, etc. Okay, the next question, I'll give you a little time, but kind of move through these. The next question is, why would you take solo time? Why would you want to take solo time? In other words, your intention. Why would you do it, or why would you want to do it? Because the intention impacts everything else. Also give you some examples. Maybe there's more than one that resonates with you for rest, rejuvenation, to get quiet, to listen to what's in your heart, what's important, what's next. Maybe to be creative, to engage in a creative project you've been wanting to do. To get out of the mundane, shift perspectives, or shift your state in some way. Maybe even to have fun or challenge yourself. But what's true for you in this moment? So the next question. If you were to actually take solo time in your life, when would you take this? When would you, in this moment, if you were to put it in your books, when would that be and how long? Is this daily for 5 minutes? Is this a couple hours, a couple days? With that, again, how long can you take? I know there have been many times in my life I thought there's no way I can take any time. And once I just took a month because I needed to for my brain to reset. Many times I've been surprised that the world did not actually fall apart while I took a few days off. Hmm. Okay, also note if you were to do this, so we can even be theoretical here, but put something down. Would you be doing this fully solo? Would you be doing this with someone else, but sort of having your own experiences, which often can be really supportive to actually follow through, begin and end together, go do something, come back. So just thinking about how that would be. With that, where would you go? Where will you go? Where will you be? And or where might you go if you're beginning to dream into this? Get as specific as possible. And how or what will support you, whether that's where you are or who or what will support you in holding your intentions, might you share your intentions with, and or who or what will support you logistically in your life to be able to take time if you were to take this time. You could do it in person or from afar. Even your spiritual support might be supporting you, the earth. Okay, the next question. What will you do in your solo time or not do? What will you do or not do? And will it be planned? Will it be spontaneous? And let your intention really guide all of these pieces. Could be some balance of planned and spontaneous. If you do this, know that it will continue to unfold any plans. So right now, just putting whatever is coming to mind now. Okay. So a question, this comes from ceremony work, though we use the word severance, which is letting go of either the old way of being, or when we do solo time, ceremonial solo time, how do we step out of the mundane or the day-to-day or the habitual way of being? So what do you need in place so that you can sever or step out of your day-to-day routine? And that could be, what do you need? That kind of goes along with the last question. Maybe, do you need support from other people, and or what do you need for yourself? Do you need to turn off your technology? What kind of boundaries do you need? Do you need to communicate that you'll be away, etc.? What will help you sever? What will help you actually step into that solo time? You might want to go back to these questions too, because I know I'm moving through them. On the topic of support in a very particular way, who would you, if anyone, who would you like to tell that you're going to be doing this? Either for support of any sort, like I've already mentioned, or just for accountability. So that sometimes when we say it out loud, when we make a commitment, when it's witnessed, it's more likely that we'll actually follow through. You might even ask, will you ask me if I'm doing this? Will you check in with me? Will you make sure I'm actually taking this time? Who will you tell? What kind of support do you want from them? Okay, and then a big piece, it's a big topic when we look at especially ceremonial solo time, this word incorporation, which is bringing what we learned into our bodies, bringing what we learned into our life, any commitments we make to ourselves, ahas, discoveries from that time of more space. How do we bring it back so that we don't just jump back into our habits? And so how, and to think about this ahead of time is even super bonus, because this is an inevitable piece. So right now, as you think about this possibility of your solo, whatever type it is, how might you integrate what you learn, what you feel, what you experience on your solo, and bring that back into your day-to-day? How will you remember? How will you bring that back? Some examples to plan this before you leave. Maybe when you get back, you're going to create a visual memory or a touchstone or a ritual, or maybe share with someone. Those are some examples, but you can think about that. final piece is truly an invitation in this moment to take a moment and maybe even close your eyes, connect with your heart, and just see, is this what you've been journaling on? Is this something you will commit to? Are you a yes? And if so, make that commitment energetically with yourself in your heart. Whatever's true is perfect. If you're not ready to commit, it's okay. Be real. And also consider, is there anyone that you want to speak this to in your life for that accountability, and or no pressure, but if you want to say it in the chat, feel free. If you want to share with us a commitment or something you're going to do, again, just whatever's true for you is just right. And I would love to open it up if there are any comments or questions from this process, either for yourself, any responses that are here as you've reflected, as you've walked through this, and or comments about what we've been talking about, questions. And feel free to raise your hand or just unmute.
I'll add a little thought while everyone else is gathering their thoughts. I think about logistics and the overwhelm of logistics and how they can get in the way. And so as you were answering, or as you're going through all these questions, I started to think, well, what are the barriers that might come up for folks, and how to take the really dreamy version of the solo and make it attainable, you know?
I love that. Oh, Kristen, tomorrow. I'm like, what did you say? You're heading out tomorrow. Nice.
Yeah, I
And
believe JC dropped the actual questions in the chat. So if people want to take a look at that, they can actually see the questions again.
thank you. Kripalu, nice. Planning solo and ceremonial time for Monday in the eclipse. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, anything anyone wants to share, or just even how is this conversation? Is it inspiring? Is it daunting? Is it saddening? Inspiring? Hmm. No?
Hi. I I really struggle with nervous system regulation and overthinking. So when I think of a solo walk, which, I've done solo walks and sit spots and things. But for me, my greatest fear is the overthinking, coming to that place where I'm just calm. And I guess just mentioning when you get out there and if your mind is busy, if your nervous system is busy, just to connect with your senses, your touch, taste, smell. And that has been super grounding for me, just to really focus on a leaf and the details of the leaf and what it smells like, feels like, all those things. Yeah, because sometimes, when you come out of your busy life and you just go to the forest and your nervous system is still hijacked, it takes a while to calm it down. So yeah, just a little uh insight of how I kind of ground myself on these solo walks. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a common experience because, I mean, I think what you said is so useful. How do we find the practices to ground and to come into the present moment? It just makes me think about, and again, I think we can do that in a short amount of time. There's a concept that's written about in different literature called the wilderness effect or the 3-day effect. And a lot of people will say it takes 3 days for our nervous systems in the woods to actually reset from the level that we're in, at least in the US, living at. But I think what you're speaking to is common. Like often people don't want to do solo because the beginning of the time we start to notice our nervous systems and the freneticness that we're living in. So I love that you shared what helps you actually drop in. Yeah. Great. Anyone else want to share out loud? Thanks for those of you making some comments in the chat too. Can you speak to what the severance integration pieces may look like for some of shorter solo experiences? Yeah, so severance really just means stepping out of the habit, stepping out of the day-to-day. So if you are sitting down on a cushion to meditate, severance might be sitting down. It might be lighting a candle, which is a symbol, a ritual to our mind that something else is happening. Might be doing a bow, ringing a bell, basically something that calls our attention and brings us out of just sort of discursive thinking or making the breakfast, etc. And then the incorporation or integration of that could be that while I'm sitting on my cushion, I set an intention for the day. And when we set an intention, even if we forget about it, it's almost like pointing the nose of our boat or our compass in a particular direction. And it does have an impact. So it's how do I bring this into my life? Or it might be, I'm going to have an intention to bring this presence into my challenging conversation today, etc. So it can be as simple as that. How do we step out of the day-to-day and how do we bring back what we have there into our life? Feel free, Lisa or Somerville, if you want to add anything here. Yeah. Were there any other questions? Well, Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit? We're going to just share for a couple minutes if you want supported solo time, some organizations, and then we'll talk that offer that and a little bit about ours if you're interested as well.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I really appreciated the piece around, accountability. And, I know myself well enough to know that I might be like, oh, what's the weather forecast for tomorrow? Maybe I won't do my solo tomorrow. And so there is something about that accountability piece that kind of keeps me honest. And I also appreciated, what Rachel had to say about, there is a little bit of fear going into a solo with, what is my nervous system going to be like, and what is my mind going to be like, around, we're so used to doing, that being can be really, really hard. So just really appreciated her shedding some light on that piece because it is a real thing. So yeah, some facilitated programs. I mean, Katie will talk a little bit about the programs that the Institute offers, but we felt like it was important to also share some of our other colleagues who are also facilitating this work and offer, programs for youth, for men, for queer identifying folks, as well as women. And so School of Lost Borders has a number of programs that they offer throughout the year in various locations, as does Animas Valley Institute. And then Somerville made me aware of a program that Richard Rohr has called Illumin that is specifically for men identifying folks. And they have a lot of programs that are in person. And then they also had some online offerings for like men council circles, which I thought was really, really wonderful and a great thing. If you have men in your life, or if you identify male, it's a great program and a great way to kind of get into that space of sharing and holding some sacred space with each other. So anyway, I felt that those were all great offerings from these programs. And then I thought Katie could maybe say a few words about the programs we're going to offer this summer.
Great. Another I want to add one that we didn't put on here, which is youth passages or youth passageways, They're out of Washington, and they do have a lot of youth programs. School of Lost Borders also has youth programs. And so we are Somatic Wilderness Therapy Institute, and we offer solo support in a lot of different ways. We actually do offer one-on-one support to help people craft their own solos, whether that in any way, like we just did here, or I've helped people craft their own quest in the wilderness. Sometimes they've done it by themselves. Sometimes they've had a friend come out with them and hold space. So that's something that we do support people in, either that we're already working with, or sometimes people will just come for that. And then we also offer 2 group supported programs that are for people who identify as women, including trans women are welcome, femme identified. If people are interested and want to talk with us about that and they're not sure, we're very open. And the first one is Inner Quest. It's a 4-day, Lisa and I lead that one. It's happening in June. And the second one's a 6-day called Soul Fire that Somerville and I are going to be leading late July. Yeah. And both of these are programs in a group that we begin with prep sessions online and offering ways to prepare. And then once we gather, we spend 2 days essentially on both programs, preparing, connecting with ourselves, connecting with our intention, fleshing that out a little bit more, connecting with the land, connecting with the community there. And then on the Inner Quest, there's a 24-hour solo. On the Soul Fire, there's a 48-hour solo, so a day or 2 days of going out, being on the land with your intention. Beforehand, we do a lot of support of what that might look like for you out there, being in one place. Opportunity potentially to fast from food or fast from many other things that you are habits that you want to put to the side for your life or not. There's a lot of choice. And then on the other end, we either have a day or 2 days of integration, of incorporation, really looking at how do we bring this into our bodies? How do we bring this back into our lives in very specific and practical ways? And then we also have a follow-up meeting to, once you're home, to remember what's happening. That's a very brief overview. I don't know if any of you want to share either anything else. No. I'll say, oh yeah, go ahead, Somerville.
No, I just want to say, well, I will share 13 years ago, I was a participant in one of Katie's quests that is now the Soul Fire quest. And it was life-changing and affected the direction that I took my business. And what an honor to get to co-facilitate with you all these years later. So I can speak from both sides of the experience.
Nice. Awesome. And I'll say one of the things I feel like is really important is we have a structure, but then there's a lot of space within the structure to make it your own. So structure and room for you to bring your practices, your symbols, your ways of doing things, which is really important to us. Lisa, were you going to share something?
No, I was thinking just, that we, within our programs, our group programs, we do offer some one-on-one intention setting time ahead of the quest as well. And I was just thinking that specifically.
Oh, yes. Great. Thank you. Nice. When we like to say when you put the time in the books for your solo for a ceremony, the ceremony begins. So whether you're going to follow up from your journal time today and you know your intention, or if you do a quest like this, the moment you commit, things start happening, things start unfolding and bubbling up in your life, which is pretty powerful. Before we do a closing all together, just want to open it up and see if anyone does have questions about our solos or anything else that came up from today, would love to just open that up, answer anything. Yes, Jillian. Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much. So, something that comes up for me when I think about doing solo trips is safety. And I actually facilitate a lot of nature-based and wilderness immersions. But when I think about going out by myself, I have past experiences that that's the first barrier that comes up for me, is actually being in wild places and feeling safe to actually be in a state of being. My nervous system just gets totally flared up. So my question is, do you have any resources or recommendations for groups or organizations that maybe have protected lands that you can get permits, or you can get like something more of a controlled wilderness environment where there might be some filtering of like the general public going in, or just any recommendations you have around looking into this? And it's also interesting because I find that this is something that individually, once I chat with people, it comes up, but I rarely hear it mentioned in like group discussions. So I sense that I'm not alone in that, but it's also very curious to me, even having done like wilderness first aid trainings, like it never comes up, and I'm constantly bringing this question forward. So I wanted to just like talk that as well.
Yes. Somerville, were you going to speak to that?
I did want to say some things. Thank you for the question, Jillian, because this is something I do talk about with clients quite a bit, and just in my personal, like my practice, work with folks in titrating comfort in their time outside alone. But I think there's also the reality, right, of how safe is it? And so I'm curious for you, if you're like the programs that we just went through are, I can't speak to all of them. I know for Katie's programs, the Institute's programs, they are on protected land. And then, but I'm curious if you're asking like for a personal, if you're looking to find land that's protected to do a solo, not through a program. Is that what you're asking about? That's a great question. And my initial thought is networking to find, friends of friends, like people who have property in areas. And the beautiful thing about a solo is you don't have to travel very far, right? It can be something that is somewhat stationary. And just if I'm happy to chat with you if you're looking in this area, but it's a good question. Like, what's the network approach? Yeah, but that clarifies your question further for me. So that's all I have right now, but Katie.
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, it's real. Like the worry is real. And I've done many of my own solos, and that is something that has come up a lot. And I even did like a whole, the ceremony I told you about that was 4 days. I did a whole like shamanic journey, energetic clearing of the space, intention setting, calling in support, and then people walked through my site, and thing I was most afraid of was people, and people literally walked through, it was a part of the solo. But and I think that it is so important, because if you are in terror the whole time, I don't think that's helpful, actually. Like, yes, fear is very, very common, but you do not want to be in terror the whole time, because that's not actually serving you. So I think, like Somerville was saying, looking for, who do you know, or friends of friends, reaching out, sometimes literally doing it in a cabin where you then walk outside during the day and come back and have a more protected place for the night. Sometimes camps, sometimes doing it with friends where you're near enough each other where you feel like, okay, there's other people near, but not necessarily in the same space. So those are a couple ideas or things that I've considered.
Tammy just put in the chat, and I was thinking that same thing, Tammy, but yeah,
Oh,
Hip
great.
Camp is a good site to rent private space, and it's insured like Airbnb. And I think that can be like renting a campsite can be nice, but you don't know who your neighbors are, and that can bring up, just depends on different people's comfort level. But thanks for the suggestion, Tammy, and for the question, Jillian.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, we are going to close with some breath and a poem here. You will send out the replay. So if there's anything you want to listen to again here, if you want to check out the journal questions, feel free. And if any questions come up about creating your own process, or if we can support you in any way, individually or collectively, of course, reach out. And again, so good to see so many familiar faces here. Oh my goodness. Yay.
Katie, before you just go into the closing, I also wanted to say that I answer the mail at info@. And so if you do have questions about any of this, I'm also happy to answer the mail.
Lisa's a great responder, much better than I am. All right, so let's do a couple breaths together. If it feels good to you, you can bring your attention inward, like as we began, maybe closing your eyes or having a soft gaze. Oh, yes, and if you jumped on late, it's okay. We'll send you the replay. We're sorry. And bringing your attention inward to your heart area. Again, you might make contact with your heart if that feels good, or somewhere else on your body if that feels supportive or grounding. Taking a moment to feel ground. Noticing what's present now in your body, maybe similar or different from when we began. Notice if anything's been stirred. Breathe into that. Notice if there's any intention, curiosity, or commitment that you are bringing with you from this time.
And now in closing, a poem from Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. Thank you all so much for being here and for answering a call to solo time. We're excited to see how this might move in you. And if you have not only questions, but ideas, updates, resources you want to share, let's keep the conversation going.
Yes. Blessings. Thank you all. Yes.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Good to see you both, all three.
Yeah, good to see you.